Look how pretty she is. So I thought I would sit down today and give a recap and give some tips based on the in-person pole competition that I just did. And if you saw, my previous video was early on in the process explaining and vlogging about preparing for the pole competition. And so this is the follow-up to that. So if you didn't know, this was my first in-person pole competition. Again, I've performed non-aerial dancing many times before, and I performed pole silks, but this is my first in-person competing experience. I did a virtual pole competition as well last summer. So the choice to do in-person was easy. I knew I wanted to do in-person, especially knowing that more in-person competitions were happening since the height of COVID. And the best part of training for an in-person competition, especially at my studio, was the amount of other dancers doing the competition and being able to train with them and bond with them, and we would support each other and we would talk through different questions and different ideas that we had. That made the experience even better than training for the virtual competition, where I wasn't alone. I had instructors who I was sending videos to and getting feedback from, but I still didn't have that in-person training experience at the studio like I did throughout these past couple months. One anxiety I had was performing on unfamiliar poles, and I may or may not be the only one who feels that way, but even going into a new studio space, there can be some anxiety that comes from that, just not knowing exactly how the poles are, how fast they spin, how slick they are, how sticky they are. And so you have these movements in mind for your piece, and you know how you need to move, how ideally you would move on the poles, and then suddenly you have to take it and do your best on poles you haven't done it before. Well, and I'll get more into what the day of competition looked like later, but there was no reason to worry about that because we did have pole testing time. And also the stage lights, and I don't know how this, I never thought of this before, but the stage lights kept the poles really warm. And of course they had really awesome pole cleaners, so they kept everything squeaky clean. But the main thing that I enjoyed is that the poles were warm the whole time. And so even when we were the first thing in the morning pole testing, they were really warm just because of the stage lights. So the timeline, I would say, starts 2 months before, and that is typically when PSO, Pole Sport Organization, they close the date, the opportunity to register for the competition 2 months before. So that's really your time to start training, and that's why they have that in their timeline. So 2 months before, what you should be doing is thinking about the tricks that you're super confident with. If you can't do them 100% of the time, you should be able to do them most of the time. And also ideally you could do them on both sides in case you need, in a combination, to suddenly do it on the other side. You're doing one trick that works, and then you have to transition into it, and oh, suddenly that's my lesser favorite side. So you should be prepared to do that. And that goes into the other thing. 2 months before, you're playing around with combinations. You're seeing what'll work. You may or may not have your music picked out, but you should have a few selections to play with and to improv to. So you're taking what you have in mind in spin and static and on the floor, and you're seeing how the movement feels and looks to those pieces of music. And I would also say select your music based on how you feel, how those improv sessions feel. And when you look back at your videos, how does that look to you? More so than talking to friends about your music choices and getting their feedback on what song would be best. Because while they have their opinions, one, they're not the ones performing it, and two, they don't have your vision in mind for the overall piece. So really listen to yourself, trust yourself. At the studio, we all went through different music choices and were selecting during that time, and it worked out for everybody to go with the piece of music that they felt the most powerful with, they felt the most confident with, and really ultimately the most inspired by. And especially with the artistic categories, you're being judged on concept clarity. And even if you don't have a specific character, you're wanting to portray an idea. And so whatever music can help you do that, that's what you go with. That's my advice with that. So all of that's happening in the 2 months. It's not a time yet where you're training every single day on your piece. And again, if you saw the last video, you saw pretty much I split up the days, a floor day, a static day, and a spin day. Especially first off, because really what you're doing is firming up certain combinations. And you can't really put your connections of floor to pole until you have your music anyway. It's I wouldn't say a total waste of time to think about it, but until you have your music firmed up, all that will change anyway. Now, also what's happening in the couple months before is that and this will sound crazy to say, you're not changing your eating habits, but you're being mindful of what you're eating. What I mean by that is that, I'm not vegan, so I wouldn't choose that time 2 months before a competition to turn vegan, thinking that that's gonna do something for me. I already know it won't. I already have been having some plant-based meals throughout the week, and so that just kind of continued. What I was focusing on is lots of produce, lots of protein to keep the energy up. And of course the produce will keep the vitamins up and keep you healthy, keep your immune system going, because during training time you don't want that to go down. You don't want to suddenly be sick because of a lack of vitamins in some area. And always staying hydrated. That will not only help your muscles, but your overall mental state as well. So about 1.5 months before, I narrowed down the song, and then I also got a Word document started with the lyrics of the song, and then by highlighting, I color-coded what would be floor, what would be low static pole, what would be higher static pole, and then what would be spin. So those are the areas that I chose to map out throughout the lyrics. And like I said, it was simply a Word document and using the highlighter in different colors. And I would recommend also in the bottom of that document making a key of what color means what, so that as you go through and change things, you're not losing track of, what does that color mean? Because you will change things, and that's also a good reason to start this far in advance, is that you're giving yourself time and grace to make changes. The other thing to do about 1.5 months before is to pick out your costume. If anything needs to be ordered, that gives you enough time to order it, especially if it's coming from another country. So give that time. Again, you've got your music picked out, so that's the time to firm up your costume as well. And of course, if you've already got pieces, then wear those. There's nothing wrong with wearing something that you already have. And so at about 1 month mark before competition, you're looking to have the piece pretty much done. Now, this is also to give yourself time to still change things here and there. And That includes changing the tricks themselves, changing combinations, changing the timing of certain things, because often, more than not, I think I see dancers rushing, and that's even non-aerial dancers. We always rush at first. And so I think we find that when you really take time and again really analyze videos that you take of you doing run-throughs, then you see how much better it looks when you really take time and you let your audience see the shapes. And then 2 weeks before, getting close there, the folks at my studio arranged a dress rehearsal. And so we were able to do our run-throughs for each other and also for an experienced instructor, and she gave everyone feedback. And so that was beyond valuable. And the other thing I would recommend for that time is not only to wear and test the costume, but go ahead and take the time to test hair and makeup, see how that feels, see how that looks in your video, see if that really helps you portray what you want. And again, going by the feelings that you have when you are in that full costume, that will really help you set up that character, set up that mood, set up that vibe. So after that dress rehearsal, you're utilizing any feedback you've been given. And so that next week, you should do maybe 2 to 3 run-throughs in a training session. Not 6 or 10. That would be a lot on your muscles, because you remember you've already done the training, and so you don't want to do anything to overly tear any muscles that can't be repaired before the competition and leaving you extra sore when inevitably you're going to be sore, but you don't want to be any more sore than you have to be. 1 week before the competition, I would say cut out any extra pole classes or any extra cross training. I will say up until that point of the week before, I had upped my cardio, and that was a big thing that helped me with my endurance. But that week before, I didn't do any cardio. I just let my body recover, and it had the strength it needed to. I was a little worried about losing any flexibility, but I didn't. And I still had 2 training sessions that week before the competition. And really, I still stretched every day. So there was absolutely no loss of flexibility. So those are the things I focused on that week before. And again, with food, not eating anything terribly unfamiliar to me, but sticking with putting in as many healthy things as I could into my body: whole fruits and vegetables, whole grains, enough carbs, but the right carbs that can be digested easily in your body. I do a lot of quinoa. I do whole grain breads. So really just thinking about what you're putting into your body that week, that'll not only fuel your muscles for energy, but keep the hydration going through them to keep you from having any muscle cramps, because that would be the last thing you would want on stage, is for your foot to cramp up and you can't point your toes, or any other part of your body cramp up and you just feel awful and you can't do what you need to. So this whole process, you're doing things to keep that from happening, but that week before is really crucial in giving your body what it needs to repair what's happened during the training process. And not only for your body, but you're fueling your mind too. Because, of course, leading up to a competition, there's going to be anxiety. And so the unhealthier foods, drinking in excess of alcohol, that will all increase your anxiety, which again makes for not such good news at all on competition day. You want to have a clear head. Yeah, you're going to have natural nerves, butterflies, but you don't want any extra anxiety weighing on you and unnecessary thoughts and worries. You just want to go in with as clear of a head as you can. Which leads me to the day of competition. and which is always an exciting day. And I did sleep pretty well the night before, which I recommend getting as much sleep as you can. And even if you are lying in bed, feeling like you're not really falling asleep, do the action of lying in bed, closing your eyes. At least start with that much. And your body will take care of the rest. Your body will take care of the rest. And so that way you're woken up as rested as you can be, and eat a good breakfast, whatever that means to you. There should be plenty of protein, good carbs, sugar from natural fruits. So those are all good things to put in your body that morning. And plenty of it. Don't be shy, because especially if you're competing, you're performing later in the day, then you've got time to digest it. And I was performing closer to 4 o'clock, so I knew I even had time to have lunch, and I did. I didn't deprive myself of that. And again, it was a healthy lunch with protein and good grains. So just do the best you can with that. Of course, drinking plenty of water throughout the day. If you have to use the bathroom a bunch, then go and do that. But keep the water intake going up there. And that morning, Pole Sport Organization always coordinates pole testing times. And so for our competition, it was in the morning. And so we were able to, in costume or not, get on stage and test the static pole and then test the spin pole. So there were people testing each pole at one time. And they will limit the time you have on it, but we weren't monitored that closely to where we gave each other turns, so that I didn't feel rushed. But like I said earlier, the poles felt great, and the stage lights really do keep them warm. So if you have any anxiety about unfamiliar poles and what will they feel like, how will I be able to move on them, I would say do your best to get over that and just take the chance of an in-person competition, because it was a great experience and the poles felt great. And so as soon as I pole tested, that worry went away. So I'm glad that we had that time to do that. And in any pole sport organization competition, you will have some pole testing time. So to sum up the whole experience, I would say if you're thinking about doing an in-person competition, do it. And just embrace the process, embrace the changes in your piece that you will inevitably make, and trust the polers around you. And you'll have some great times getting closer with them, making connections with them. I can't recommend the whole experience enough. And yes, I got first, but at the end of the day, it wasn't even about that. Yeah, that was awesome. That was the cherry on top. But the best part, and what I will always remember and tell anybody who wants to listen, is that it's about the connections that were made between me and the other polers at the studio. And then at that day, we all got to meet polers from other places too, which was exciting. And you just don't get that all the time. So I highly, highly, highly recommend the whole experience. And do like the video, give a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe, and leave a comment with anything else you want to see pertaining to competitions, pertaining to anything, pole related, fitness related, health related. And I'll be looking forward to making more content for y'all.